All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We're going to cover a very interesting topic about climate-related disclosure and specifically on corporate GHG management. So these days, a lot of organizations are increasingly focusing on climate-related disclosures that have become kind of priorities for the public, investors, and also the regulators. In today's webinar, we are going to cover some of the guidance and also information to support organizations' effort toward addressing the GHG elements that typically make up the climate-related disclosure for a lot of companies. So before we dive in, let's quickly walk through the 4 key elements that form the foundation of effective climate disclosures. And we actually structured this presentation to cover all these 4 elements. So first, we're going to start with developing a greenhouse gas inventory information. We're going to just cover, and the organization should actually just do that, which means tracking the organization emissions across 3 scopes. Which are scope 1 and 2 and 3. We're going to cover what we mean by those scope, and also this can help to just build a comprehensive view of the organization carbon footprint. Next is actually the GHG reduction target, which so it's not enough to just measure the greenhouse gas footprint, but organizations also need to act. And that's where a science-based target come into play. This target actually align the organization emission goals with what's needed to limit global warming and show a serious commitment to climate responsibility. The third part, it's more around the climate-related risk and opportunities. This involves identifying how climate change could financially impact the business. Everything's from supply chain disruption to changing market demand, and how the organization might benefit from proactive adaptation. And finally, it's all about the climate transition plan. This is actually the roadmap and how the organization shifts operation, investment, and processor over time to align with the climate goal. A very well-defined plan actually shows the stakeholders that the organization is not just planning, but also preparing. So this presentation, we are going to cover these 4 key elements for the climate disclosure. So let's start with the GHG inventory part. So there are several leading voluntary frameworks that guide how organizations approach climate disclosure, each serving actually a different goals, but they are actually complementary. So firstly, we have the GHG protocol corporate standard, which is the foundation. This standard offers detailed guidance on how to measure and report emission at the corporate level. That's where most organizations begin when building their GHG inventory. The next framework is the Science-Based Target Initiatives, or SBTI, which help organizations go a step further by setting emission reduction targets that are aligned with climate science. This standard provides a clear framework for what net zero should look like in a practice, and also ensure that corporate goals are credible and also consistent. Then we have the Carbon Disclosure Project, or CDP, which is a global platform used by thousands of businesses to disclose their environmental impact. CDP helps organizations track their performance over time and also give investors access to standardized climate-related data. And finally, we have the International Sustainability Standard Board, or ISSB, which is working to unify sustainability reporting. This standard incorporates the TCFD recommendation, which is another framework, and aim to provide globally consistent and also comparable climate-related disclosure for investors. So one of the key, I would say, challenges that we had in terms of carbon accounting, and also even like in general in terms of sustainability, is just having like different kind of like frameworks and standard, and then ISSB trying to just make it more like consistent and also comparable. While many organizations have used those voluntary framework that we discussed, we are now seeing actually a growing number of regulatory requirements that are raising the bar for climate disclosure. First, we have the SEC climate disclosure rule, which mandate that certain public companies report on material related climate related risk, their greenhouse gas emission, and also any climate related target. The focus here is on transparency for investors. Also, the federal contractor requirements propose the companies doing business with the US government must not only disclose their emission, but also set science-based reduction target. This reflects the federal government's push to lead by example on climate action. So we have like kind of like similar mandate by like California Senate Bill 253 and also California Senate Bill 261, which is just target kind of like some of these like 253 is actually targeted large companies, those with over 1 billion in revenue, and the Bill 261 applies to slightly smaller business with like $500 million or more in revenue. And it actually just, again, more like a kind of mandate in terms of like the carbon inventory, GHG inventory, and also reporting on the climate related financial risks. So developing a GHG inventory is not just a reporting exercise. It's actually a strategic tool with several important benefits for businesses. First, it helps businesses identify reduction opportunities. So by understanding where the emission come from, businesses can pinpoint the most effective areas for action, whether that's improving energy efficiency, switching to cleaner fuels, or even like engaging suppliers. Also, a solid inventory allows the organization to participate in GHG programs, whether voluntary or mandatory. This includes compliance schema, industry initiatives, or environmental certifications that often require verified emission data. Also, this inventory opens the door to GHG market and carbon trading system. With accurate emission data, businesses can engage in carbon credit program or emission trading, turning reduction into economic value. And finally, developing inventory can lead to public recognition. Organizations that take early voluntary steps to address their emission often gain credibility with stakeholder, customer, and also investor who are looking for climate leadership. All right. So now let's talk about the development process for GHG inventory. So here you can see like a step-by-step process which ensures accuracy, consistency, and long-term value of GHG inventory development. So in step one, it's all about planning the inventory. This involves reviewing relevant standards like the GHG protocol, deciding what part of the organization to include, and also selecting a base year to measure progress against. Getting this foundation right is the key to credible reporting. Next is about the collecting data and quantify emission. This means gathering operational data like energy use, fuel consumption, or travel, or using emission factors to calculate the actual greenhouse gas output. And accuracy here is actually set the stage for meaningful insight. Once the numbers are in, it's time to develop a management plan. This is where organizations document how data will be collected, verified, and updated going forward. Usually in an inventory management plan, which helps to ensure consistency year over year. And finally, when the organization set the target and track progress with the baseline and processes in place, they can establish clear emission reduction goals and monitor how well they are doing over time. That's where the inventory becomes a tool for action, and not just for reporting, but also for action as well. So now let's go through this step. So with step one, which is developing a GHG inventory planning. And it's laid the groundwork for everything that follows. So a part of this step is just all about start by reviewing standards. It's important to understand the GHG accounting framework and how they guide consistent, transparent reporting. These standards help ensure the inventory aligned with the best practices and also is comparable across organizations. Next is about the boundaries. This means define both the organization boundaries, which part of the company are included, and also the operational boundaries, which type of activities and emission, like whether it's scope 1, scope 2, or 3, will be counted. Clear boundaries here is critical for accuracy and relevance. Then the business should choose a base year. This is the year that organization use as a reference point to track future emission reduction. Ideally, it should be the year with reliable data and also representative operations. And finally, there is verification piece. Even if it's not required, planning for third-party verification can strengthen credibility, especially for investor, regulator, and also participants in climate program. So let's talk about the organization boundary. So as I said, when setting up the GHG boundary inventory, a key decision is how to define the organization boundaries. In other words, which part of the business it's part of the reporting. There are three main approaches to choose that. Firstly, there is this equity shared approach. This method accounts for emission based on the ownership stake in a business or asset. So if the organization owns 40% of a joint venture, they should report 40% of that emission. The second approach is the financial control approach. Here, the organization should report 100% of emission from operation where the organization has the ability to direct financial and investment decision, even if they don't own the business. And third, the most commonly used one is the operational control approach. This one accounts for 100% of emission from operation that the organization control on a day-to-day basis, like setting policies, managing activities, and also making decisions. It often is preferred because it reflects what the organization feels directly responsible for and also is able to influence. So now, when we're done with that boundary and all those kind of initial steps, the second step is about the collecting data and calculating emission. So to do that, there is again another 4 steps kind of process. So first, organization need to identify the data requirements. So you can think of it as more like a kind of activity data, like energy use, fuel consumption, travel, or waste, and how to collect those. Choosing efficient and reliable methods early on will save time and reduce error later. Second, there should be like a kind of collection procedure. This includes building template, tools, guidance, document that standardize how data is gathered across the organization. The goal here is consistency so that all departments and sites report in the same way. Then it's all about compiling facility level data. It more around like focusing on measure emission sources like electricity use, heating, fuel, company vehicle, and industrial processes. This is actually the foundation for the emission profile. And finally, we have this emission factor that can help to convert the activity data into actual GHG emission. These factors are usually sourced from government or international guidelines, and choosing the right one ensure the calculations are credible and also comparable. All right, so now it's actually time to talk about these scope 1 and scope 2 and 3 that we already mentioned a number of times. So these 3 scope of emission categorize where emission come from and how directly influence the organization. So we have scope 1, which includes direct emission from sources that the organization own or control. Think of these things like fuel burn in company vehicles, on-site boilers, or manufacturing equipment. These are emissions that organization produce directly through the operation. Scope 2 is all about indirect emission from purchased energy, like electricity, steam, heating, or cooling. Even though these emissions happen off-site at the power plant, they are a result of the organization energy use and are still the responsibility to report. And the complex one, Scope 3, which includes all other indirect emission across the value chain. This means everything from supplier emissions to employee commuting, product use, and even waste disposal. For most companies, Scope 3 is the largest and most complex category, but it's also where some of the biggest opportunity for impact can be found. So when developing Scope 1 and Scope 2 inventory, it's helpful to break down emission by category and use a specific guidance to ensure accuracy. First, we have stationary combustion. This refers to emission from equipment like boiler, furnace, and turbine used for heating or industrial processes. These are established methods for calculating these emissions based on, there are actually like a established method for calculating the emission based on the fuel type and also usage. Next, we have the mobile combustion, which includes emission from company-owned vehicles and equipment like delivery trucks or construction machinery. You can typically estimate these based on the fuel consumption or mileage data. Purchased electricity falls under Scope 2, and there are two main approaches for calculating these indirect emissions. The location-based method, which uses grid average, and the market-based method, which reflects the specific energy contract or renewable purchases. Lastly, we have fugitive emission come from leaks or releases, often from refrigeration system, air conditioning, or pressurized industrial gases. These can be harder to detect, so specialized guidelines help to estimate them more reliably. All right, now let's talk about step 3, which is more around the developing a managed plan or IMP. So this IMP, which is a document, is essential for ensuring inventory is not only accurate today, but also reliable and consistent over time. The purpose of IMP is to clearly lay out how organizations collect, calculate, manage, and maintain emission data. It helps institutionalize the process so it's not dependent on any one person or team, make it easier to train new staff, pass audits, and also improve over time. Key component of an IMP includes organizational information, the boundaries, and the method that is used to quantify emission. It also outlines data management procedures, base year details, and also the tools or system used to track and store information. Finally, the IMP should also address how the organization handle auditing and verification, whether internal reviews or third-party checks to ensure credibility and also transparency. And lastly is setting target and tracking progress. So the final step in the GHG inventory process is all about turning data into action and ensuring ongoing accountability. Firstly, you need to finalize the data. This means completing the inventory using accurate, high-quality emission information. Ensuring consistency and completeness build a strong foundation for everything that follows. Secondly, consider third-party verification. While not always required, verification adds a layer of credibility, especially if you are reporting to regulator, investor, or participation in climate program. Third, it's time to report the result. So you should share the emission data with the stakeholders, whether through sustainability report, disclosure platform like CDP, or internal challenge. Transparency here builds actually trust and help alignment across the organization. And finally, GHG reduction target, which should be measurable, time-bound, and also ideally aligned with science-based pathways. Once targets are in place, regularly tracking this progress and refining the strategy is needed. So now let's quickly touch on the scope 3. So as I mentioned, the challenging one. So scope 3 emissions are often the most challenging one, but also the most impactful. Um, um, these are those indirect emissions that happen across the value chain, outside the direct control, but still tied to the organization activities. The GHG protocol defined 15 categories of scope 3 emission. These include everything from purchase goods and services, business travel, employee commuting, to use of sold product, and also end-of-life treatment. Each category help you to actually understand where emissions are coming from across the upstream and also downstream activities. On average, scope 3 emissions are 11.4 times higher than direct operational emission, meaning they usually like what's reporting under scope 1 and 2. In fact, scope 3 often makes up around 92% of a company total emission. That's why identifying and managing these emissions is so critical for setting meaningful climate goals and also engaging supplier, customers, and also partners in the process. So as I mentioned, based on GHG protocol, there are like 15 categories for scope 3. And these are grouped under upstream and downstream activities. So upstream activities include emissions that occur before a product or services reach the organization. Things like purchase goods, capital goods like building or equipment, fuel and energy related activities, not already counted in scope 1 and 2, transportation and distribution, waste generation in operation, business travel, and also leased asset. On the downstream side, we actually look at what happened after the product or service leave the organization. Things like the transportation and distribution of the sold product, processing of sold product, use of sold product, especially important for things like electronics or vehicles, end-of-life treatment like disposal or recycling, leased asset that the organization own but others operate, franchise and investment where emission come from related but not controlled entities. So this is actually just understanding these categories and which one actually apply to the organization is the first step to address scope 3 effectively. So quantifying scope 3 emission can feel overwhelming, but it becomes much more manageable when you actually break it down into clear steps. Firstly, you need to determine which of these 15 scope 3 categories are relevant to the organization. Not every category applies, so you need to focus on those that are most material in terms of emission or business impact, like purchase good, transportation, or product use. Next, you need to estimate GHG emission using the best available data. This could range from supplier-specific data to industry average or economic input-output model, depending on what's accessible and also to meet the reporting goals. The key here is to choose method that balance accuracy with practicality. And remember, scope 3 accounting is an iterative process. Over time, as the data improve and partnerships strengthen, you can refine the estimate and expand coverage and to include more categories or more accurate activity data. So the thing is because supply chain emission, which is usually like under the scope 3, make up to 90% of the company total GHG footprint, engaging supplier is absolutely essential for meaningful climate action. There are 3 key levels of supply chain engagement. Firstly is assessment. This involves evaluating the climate impact of the supplier. You might look at whether they measure their emissions, set reduction target, or have climate policies in place. This helps identify both risks and opportunities in the value chain. Next is reporting and reduction. At this stage, you're encouraging or requiring supplier to report their emission and also take steps to reduce them. This involves setting expectation, offering support, or even integrating reporting into contract and procurement processes. And finally, advanced engagement means making supplier emission as a factor in business decision. So this could mean preferred lower emission supplier, collaborating on reduction initiative, or co-investing in clear technologies. By embedding climate consideration in the supply chain relationship, organization can actually drive real emission reduction far beyond their own operations. So engaging, as we discussed, is not good for the environment, but also is a strategic move that support multiple business goals. First, it ensures alignment with the sustainability goals. So the climate commitment extend beyond just the operation. So you need supplier who are on the same page, measuring emissions, setting target, and also working toward reduction. Second, it can also help reduce cost. Collaborating with supplier to improve energy efficiency, reduce waste, and also streamline logistic often lead to saving across the value chain for them and also for the organization. Third, it's forward of risk mitigation. Climate-related disruption like extreme weather or energy price volatility can hit supply chain hard. And proactive engagement helps reduce exposure and also protect the brand from reputation or even operational risk. And finally, it helps to meet stakeholder expectation. Customer, investor, and regulator are increasingly looking for transparency and accountability, not just from the companies, but also from the entire supply chain. So the way to just engage, let's talk about those, like the approach. So effectively engaging supplier, start with a strategic and also supportive approach, especially since many may be early in their climate journey. Start with the strategic selection. Focus on the supplier that have the biggest impact, those that make up 75 to 80% of your spend, or those that present the highest climate or reputational risk, and prioritizing them make your effort more targeted and also effective. Next, you need to use a simple questionnaire. Keep your request clear and manageable. Ask for basic data like energy use or emission reporting status, overloading supplier, especially a small one, that can backfire. Building trust here is essential. Share success story and highlight how measuring GHG emission can benefit supplier too, through cost saving, innovation, or stronger customer relationships. Make it a partnership, not just a compliance exercise. And finally, offer assistance. Many suppliers, especially smaller ones, may not have the resources or knowledge to track emission. Providing training, tooling, or template help the participant without being overwhelmed and also show you are serious about supporting their progress. Driving climate action within an organization also require more than just good data. It also takes strong internal alignment and support. Firstly, focus on developing allies. Build relationship with key manager across departments like operation, procurement, finance, and HR. These allies can help champion GHG effort within their own team and also offer valuable insight on where climate initiatives can fit into existing workflow. Next, leverage success. If you have a win in one business unit, like a cost-saving energy project or successful supplier engagement, share that story. Real-world results help build momentum and also show that sustainability effort deliver tangible value. And importantly, secure executive support. Leadership buy-in is critical for allocating resources, setting priorities, and signaling that climate goals are business priorities, not just side project. Be clear about what's needed to move forward and also how it supports the organization boundary mission or broader mission, sorry. Also, one powerful way to scale your supplier engagement is by joining third-party program and collaborative initiatives. These platforms allow companies within the same industry or with shared supplier to work together and streamline climate reporting. Collaborative initiatives like the CDP Supply Chain Initiative, Supplier Ethical Data Exchange, SEDEX, or the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, offer standardized tools and also frameworks that make it easier for suppliers to report once in a consistent format rather than responding to multiple fragmented requests. The benefit of collaboration are significant. Supplier experience less reporting fatigue, improving participation rate. The organization face a reduced data management burden, less time cleaning, chasing, or converting data. And organization can gain access to shared learning, helping benchmark, troubleshoot, and improve the program fast. These initiatives help protect confidential information, giving supplier more confidence in the process. So engaging the whole value chain, especially supplier, as we discussed, is essential for tackling scope 3 emission and building a more sustainable business. A strong engagement strategy includes several key components. So we already discussed some of those, like data collection. So you can start to request emission information from the supplier. That can be through the survey, standardized platform like CDP, or the direct communication. Next, there is supplier education. You can share resources, tools, and best practices to help supplier understand how to measure and reduce their emission. For many, this may be new process to support, and support is very critical. Then you need to focus on target setting. Encourage key suppliers to sell their own science-based or absolute reduction target, aligning their goal with yours to drive collective progress. Don't forget to recognize success, and also look for opportunity for collaborative action. Partner with supplier or joint initiatives like energy efficiency, upgrade, or low carbon logistics to achieve shared emission reduction goals. When calculating GHG emission, using the right emission factor is also essential. We have this EPA's GHG emission factor hub, which is the go-to resource for these types of information. The hub provides organizational with a centralized, reliable source of default emission factor for greenhouse gas reporting. It's designed to support consistency and also accuracy, especially for organizations that may not have custom data. It also draws from trusted sources, including the EPA Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, or EGRI, for electricity emission, and other vetted databases. This ensures that the data reflect best practices and also regulatory standards. What makes it especially valuable is the regular update. The hub is actually refreshed annually, so you are always working with the most current information. And it offers comprehensive coverage, whether you are calculating emission from electricity, transport, waste. The hub includes factors across scope 1, 2, and 3. One thing that I forgot to mention, the majority of this information for this presentation is coming from this EPA Resource Center. I'm going to add the link in the description so that you can access to that kind of resource center and get a better view of where most of this information is coming from. When estimating scope 3, as I mentioned, it's essential to use credible category-specific emission factor, and these factors help translate those activity data like mileage into GHG emission. For category 1 and 2, which are like purchased goods and also capital goods, a common source is the USEEIO, which is the US Environmentally Extended Input-Output Model. It provides economic sector-based emission factors that are useful when detailed supplier data is not available. So kind of like similar things for the other category. There are like a kind of links and the emission factor source. As I mentioned, I'm going to provide that link so that you can access to those information and you can use it for estimating the carbon for these different category of emission. Now let's go through the target setting. So let's start with the benefits. So here, like you can see a number of those benefits that you can achieve when you are doing the target setting. So it actually just helping you to focus on the reduction effort, and also these target setting can help you to get the management attention and secure senior leadership support and increase project funding. Also, it can help you to encourage creative solution to emission challenges, And finally, it can improve employee satisfaction and aid in recruitment and retention of those people, because they can see like the organization is actually making an impact on the planet. So let's talk about some of these best practices to set a strong GHG reduction target. First, always make the target public. Sharing them build the transparency and accountability while signaling to stakeholders, investors, customers, and employees that you are serious about climate action. Also include both a base year and also a target year. The base year give you a reference point, while the target year, usually 5 to 10 years out, set a clear timeline for progress. Third, set aggressive science-aligned goals. The Science Based Target initiatives recommend aiming for an annual reduction of around 4.2%, which aligns with the pathway needed to limit global warming to 1.45 degrees. And fourth, focus on absolute reduction, not just intensity metrics. This means committing to reduce total emission regardless of business growth, ensuring that the improvements are real and also not offset by increased output. Also, make sure the target cover global operation. Climate impact and responsibility don't stop at borders. So include emission from all countries where you operate, ensures a comprehensive and equitable approach. Also, address all emission scope. This means setting reduction goal that includes not just scope 1 and 2, but also the most relevant scope 3 categories, especially if they represent a large portion of your footprint. And third, be specific and clear in how you communicate your target. A strong example would be like company X commit to a 35% absolute reduction of scope 1 and 2 and 3 global emission by 2030 from 2020 levels. Be specific and also clear. Now let's talk about the climate risk and opportunities. When assessing climate related risk, it's helpful to group them into two main categories: transition risk and also physical risk. Transition risks are those that arise as the world shifts to a lower carbon economy. This includes policies and legal changes like new emission regulation or carbon pricing, technology shift such as the adoption of cleaner energy or more efficient system, market changes including shifting consumer demand or supply chain disruption, and reputational impact where failure to act on climate can affect brand value and also stakeholder trust. On the other side, physical risks stem from the direct impact of climate change. These can be acute, like floods or wildfires that cause sudden disruption, or chronic, such as rising sea level, long-term drought, or changing temperature patterns that gradually affect operation and supply chain. Understanding both types of risk is critical for building climate resilience and also integrating climate into financial and strategic planning. So we already quickly talk about these transition risk, like policy and legal risk. This include the introduction of carbon pricing, stricter emission reporting requirement, and product regulation. There is also the growing threat of litigation, especially for companies seen as contributing to climate harm or greenwashing. Second is technology risk. A low carbon technology rapidly advanced, companies may face disruption if they fail to adapt. Traditional systems and products could become obsolete and requiring major investment in upgrade or replacement to stay competitive. We also have market risk. This refers to shift in supply and demand. As climate conscious consumers, investors, and partners prioritize sustainable options, demand for carbon intensive products may decline, while new opportunities emerge for greener alternatives. And finally, reputation risk. Public expectation around climate action are rising, and organizations seen as lagging or misleading can face brand damage, loss of customer trust, and even challenge attracting talents. Regarding physical risk, again, those two categories, like acute physical risk, which are event-driven. This includes the increasing severity and frequency of extreme weather events like cyclone, flood, wildfire, and extreme heat or cold waves. Chronic ones, on the other hand, are long-term shift in climate patterns that involves over time. Things like sustained higher temperatures, sea level rise, and changing precipitation of pattern, and even like water scarcity. In terms of the opportunities, so while climate change presents serious risks, it also opens the door to significant opportunities for organizations that act early and strategically. Firstly, there is opportunity in products and services. By developing low emission or climate friendly offerings, businesses can meet shifting customer preference, stay ahead of regulation, and also tap into growing demand for sustainable solution. Second, changing the energy source, such as transitioning to renewable or low emission fuels, can reduce both emission and long-term energy costs. It also helps hedge against future carbon pricing or supply disruption. Third, the lower carbon transition is opening up new market, whether it's green finance, clean tech, or climate resilient infrastructure. Companies that pivot early can diversify and grow. Next is resource efficiency. So improving energy use, optimizing transport, or reducing material waste can lead to cost saving and operational improvement while also cutting emission. And finally, building resilience by adapting operation and infrastructure to withstand the climate impact can turn potential vulnerabilities into long-term strength and also competitive advantage. So to report climate risk effectively, it actually requires a structured approach, and also there are 4 key steps to do that. Step 1 is discover. So you need to begin by identifying the teams responsible for climate-related data and risk management. You need to conduct a gap analysis to understand what's already in place and where improvements are needed. From there, you can develop a clear roadmap. Step 2 is assess. This is where you dig into the data, conduct a GHG inventory, assess potential weather and climate impact, and also use scenario analysis to explore how different climate future could affect the organization. This is a step from backbone of the climate risk understanding. Step 3 is report. With your finding in hand, prepare disclosure material that align with recognized framework like TCFD, ISSB, or CDP, ensuring transparency, consistency, and comparability. And finally, step 4 is manage. This means putting the climate strategies into action, monitoring progress, and also continuously refining the plan to stay aligned with the new risks, regulations, and also opportunities. So conducting a climate risk assessment is also a structured way to understand how climate change could impact the organization and to plan accordingly. Again, here is like kind of a similar process, which starts with the identification, which involves cataloging potential physical risk like extreme weather and sea level rise, and transition risk such as policy change, technological disruption, or shift in market demand. Then is assess, which is you evaluate the likelihood of each risk occurring and the potential impact on your operation, supply chain, finance, or reputation. This help you distinguish between high and low priority risk. Next, prioritization, in where you need to focus on the effort on the risks that are most material to your business, those with the highest potential to disrupt operation or affect long-term strategy. And finally is mitigation, which means developing and implementing strategies to manage or reduce priority risk. This could include infrastructure upgrades, diversifying supplier, shifting product strategy, or enhancing business continuity. One thing is that you need to consider that the climate risks don't just affect the environment, they can also have real financial consequences for businesses. This impact can come from both transition risk and also physical risk. Transition risk impact include things like increased operational costs due to carbon pricing or compliance with new regulation, asset impairment, where changing policy or market condition reduce the value of certain asset like fossil fuel infrastructure, rising R&D costs as companies invest in low carbon technologies, reduce demand if consumers preference shift away from higher emission products, and the repricing of fossil fuel assets, which could lose value rapidly in a carbon constrained economy. On the physical risk side, business may face production disruption from extreme weather events like flood or wildfires, a write-off of damaged assets, especially in high-risk regions, higher workforce-related costs due to safety concern, increased operation expenses from resource scarcity, such as water shortages, and rising insurance premium as climate risks become more costly and also frequent. All right, now let's talk about another important element, which is climate transition planning. So a climate transition plan is a critical tool for turning climate commitment into concrete action. It outlines how an organization will shift its operation, processes, and business model to meet emission reduction goals, typically within a clearly defined timeframe. The plan starts with an action plan. This details the steps that the organization will take to achieve its GHG reduction target. It may include change to its supply chain, product lines, energy resources, or investment in new technologies. Stakeholder communication is another key element here. A transition plan provides transparency about how your business is preparing for the future, helping to build trust with investor, customers, and also employee by showing that you are not just setting goals, you have a strategy to meet them. And importantly, a transition plan is also a regulatory response. As more government and financial bodies require disclosure of climate strategies, having a formal plan in place helps you stay compliant and also competitive. And let's talk about the key component. So a strong climate transition plan includes several core components that connect your climate goal to real measurable action. First is start with the GHG reduction target. This should clearly define both near-term and also long-term goals. Ideally align with the science-based pathway, and having clear targets set the direction and urgency for your transition. Second, you need well-defined achievement strategies that outline the specific action the organization will take, whether that's adopting renewable energy, redesigning product, or improving operational efficiency to meet these targets within a set time frame. Third is value chain engagement. Since many emission and opportunities lie outside your direct operation, your plan should show how you will work with supplier, customers, industry peers, and also policymakers to accelerate progress and also drive broader impact. And finally, include scenario analysis. This helps you assess how your business might be affected under different climate future, whether through policy shift, market change, or physical risk, and adapt your strategy accordingly. In addition to setting target and defining strategies, and also a comprehensive plan should also address how your organization will manage risk, ensure accountability, and fund the journey. Firstly, you need to outline your risk response priorities. This includes how you address both physical risk and transition risk. And it should also consider the potential impact on your business model and also how you plan to adapt. In addition, you need to build a strong accountability mechanism. This means establishing governance structure, assigning roles and responsibilities, and use KPI to track progress over time. This system helps ensure the plan is implemented, but not just written. And finally, you need to detail your financial planning. A successful transition requires alignment between budget, capital allocation, and financial decision. Whether it's investing in new technology or supporting supply improvement, the financial strategy should fully support your climate goal. Now let's talk about how to develop a transition plan. First, you need to complete a GHG inventory covering those three scopes that can give you a comprehensive vision baseline and help identify where reduction are most needed. Next, you need to set science-based target. This include both near-term and also long-term goals, which is aligned with the global effort to limit warming to 1.5 degree. And this is actually the step that you establish the ambition and timeline for your transition. Then you need to identify reduction action. You need to use your inventory to map strategies to emission hotspot, whether that's switching to renewable energy or improving logistics. The more specific and measurable, the better. And finally, you need to engage key stakeholders and involve board, senior executive, and also teams across the organization early in the planning process. The buy-in is critical to align climate goal with business strategy and also drive implementation across all levels. Effective climate transition planning also require clear alignment between the financial strategy and also decarbonization goal. So you need to first do a capital allocation. Your budget and long-term planning should direct funding toward low carbon technologies and infrastructure. Also, you need to consider using internal carbon pricing. By assigning a cost to carbon emission in project evaluation, you can steer investment decision toward lower emission option, even in the absence of external carbon pricing policies. Thirdly, you need to tap into green financing mechanism like sustainability linked loan or green bonds. These instruments can help fund larger scale transition initiatives while signaling to investors that your organization is committed to climate aligned growth. And finally, you need to focus on generating climate aligned revenue by growing business segment or services that directly support the transition to a low carbon economy. And this is not just only support your goal, but also help future proof your business model. Now let's talk about the let me see, we already talked about this. Yeah, so now let's talk about the governance piece, which is a strong governance essential to ensure the climate transition plan is more than just a document. So you need to have a board oversight. The board should have visibility into the climate strategy, regulatory review process, risk opportunities to ensure alignment with the organizational broader goals and functionalities. Next is executive accountability. So to drive the real action, climate targets should be embedded in leadership performance review and also even linked to compensation. Your plan also should be supported by a robust management system. This includes tools and processes for tracking, reporting, and managing process, integrating into existing operational and financial system wherever possible. And finally, don't overlook employee engagement. Offering training, communication, and change management support help align your organization culture with your climate goals and empower employees at all levels to contribute to the transition. For the financial planning aspect for climate transition, let's look at those four key components of this financial planning. So as I said, there is some level of capital allocation that is needed. Also, you need to use internal carbon pricing. Sorry guys, I think I just moved these to a slide, but then I already covered those key areas here that you need to consider. And also the last but not least, as part of this transition plan, is scenario analysis, which is strategic tools used to explore how your business might perform under different possible future conditions, especially in the face of climate change. In climate planning, it allows organizations to assess the potential financial and operational impact of varying level of global climate action. Most analysis focus on the three key scenarios: a 1.5 scenario, a 2-degree scenario, and a 3+ degree scenario, where there is a limited action leading to more severe physical climate impact. The benefit of scenario analysis are significant. It helps you test the resilience of your business strategy, identify climate-related risks and opportunities, and also inform long-term decision-making. It also strengthens your communication with investors and regulators, and also prepare your organization for policy or market change that may come with each scenario. All right, now let's talk about the fun part, which is more around strategies to reduce carbon. So for the scope 1 and 2, organization can take a mix of strategy action that target both energy use and also energy resources. So we have renewable So switching to zero carbon electricity sources like solar, wind can significantly reduce scope 2 emission. Second piece is the focusing on energy efficiency. This means optimizing the building, equipment, and operation to reduce overall energy consumption. Third, we have electrification. So replacing fossil fuel power such as boilers, vehicles, or industry equipment. And finally, when further electrification is not feasible, consider low carbon fuel like biofuel and hydrogen. These are like the kind of like strategies that you can use to do decarbonization for scope 1 and 2. For scope 3, there is like the supply engagement that we already did discuss. You need to work with these key suppliers to set their own emission reduction target and improve their processes. Also, you need to do like product design, redesigning the product to use fewer material, more sustainable input, or lower energy manufacturing process can also significantly reduce life cycle emission from production through use and disposal. Third is transportation optimization, improving logistic like consolidation, shipping, shorter supply chain, and also switching to low carbon transportation mode. And finally, embracing circular economy principle. This means extending product lifespan, promoting reuse and repair, and improving end-of-life recovery and recycling. These are the strategies for scope 3. So in terms of like energy efficiency, which is one of the most cost-effective strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emission, you need to start with Portfolio Manager, an online tool that can help organizations track and manage energy, water use, and GHG emission across building. That's a good option. Also, Energy Star certification is also available for top performing building and industrial plants. And earning this label not only reduce emission, but also demonstrate environmental leadership to customer and stakeholders. For a smaller organization, we have Energy Star small business resources offer practical, easy to use tool to help reduce energy waste and also lower operation costs. And finally, Energy Star product certification cover around 80 categories from office equipment to HVAC system. And choosing certificate product ensure you are using energy efficient technologies and also reduce emission over the long term. So renewable, which is also a big kind of like a solution for GHG reduction. So kind of like voluntary programs actually encourage organization to use green power, and those from solar, wind, geothermal, biomass. And these resources actually produce little to no greenhouse gas emission and are essential for long-term sustainability. And also the program include over 780 partner programs using billion that all these partners using billions of kilowatt hours of green power each year. And then this is like actually just some of the programs that can help be more strategic of using renewable energy for GHG reduction. For supply chain, it's just more around using green supplier network, working in collaboration, and also starting to get those environmental benefit and also get these technical assistance to provide resources for identifying process improvement and also waste reduction. For waste management, effective waste management, it actually just play a key role in reducing GHG and especially methane from landfills and energy used in waste handling. So there are like a number of guidelines from APA on those, which cover steps like starting recycling program, reducing everyday trash, and implementing food recovery initiatives. In addition, there is like this water sense program support water efficiency, which helps reduce the energy and emission associated with water treatment and use. Together, all these strategies not only cut emission, but also lead to cost saving and also resource efficiency throughout the operation. So methane, which is a highly potent greenhouse gas, more than 25 times stronger than the CO2 over a 100 years period. Unfortunately, there are targeted programs to help organizations reduce methane emission across several sectors. So there is this AG STAR program promote the use of biogas recovery system, especially on farms, to capture methane from livestock waste. There is this landfill methane outreach program, which helps communities and companies recover methane from landfills, turning into a usable fuel source rather than letting it escape into atmosphere. It's a win for both climate and also energy generation. And in oil and gas sector, the natural gas star program worked with companies to implement cost-effective methane reduction practices. It also recognized partners who go above and beyond in their commitment to lowering methane emission. Another area which is transportation. So we have like this Smart Way, which is an EPA initiatives that partner with the freight transportation industry to improve fuel efficiency, reduce emission and cost. On the vehicle side, organization can reduce emission by acquiring EPA certified Smart Way light duty vehicle, which includes electric, hybrid, and fuel efficient options. And also the benefit of all these strategies are very clear: reduce fuel consumption, lower GHG, and also long-term cost saving. Now let's talk about some of these market landscape. So over the past decade, there's been a major shift in how market view climate-related risk and disclosure, and several key developments have shaped the momentum. So we have like this Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, which was like a turning point. It not only set global target for limiting warming, but also signaled that climate change poses a systematic risk to financial stability. Then we have this Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, or TCFD, which was created by the Financial Stability Board to address the need. It was developed widely adapted. It's actually the widely adapted framework for companies to disclose climate risk and also opportunities in consistent and comparable way. Third, the idea was embedded into our IFRS sustainability standard, especially IFRS S1 and S2 from ISSB, which now provide global standards for sustainability and climate-related disclosure. This standard incorporated the TCFD framework and aimed to bring climate reporting into mainstream financial reporting. And finally, we already discussed that SEC climate disclosure rule represent a major regulatory shift in the US, requiring certain companies to report on those climate-related risk and emission and targets. So this the disclosure landscape is actually evolving rapidly, as like we have more pressure from investor, regulator, and consumer. Today, over 50% of S&P 500 companies disclose climate-related risk in their annual report. Even more, 71% of S&P 500 companies publicly report their GHG emission, either in sustainability report or directly on their website. Globally, more than 3,200 companies have now set science-based target for emission reduction, and that all these actually signal the climate disclosure is becoming a business norm for a lot of companies. So to do an organization actually just to make their disclosure, they actually move through a free phase as they mature in managing and disclosing scope 1 and 2 emission. Each phase reflects a deeper level of commitment. At the entry level, companies have started their journey. They are disclosing emission from major sources like electricity, fuel combustion, but may still have gap in data quality or coverage and third-party verification is limited. In the intermediate phase, organizations have progressed to disclose all scope 1 and scope 2 emission, and processes are in place to ensure year-to-year consistency. Advanced organizations have typically been disclosing for 5 or more years, and also their emission data is third-party verified to a reasonable assurance level. We got like similar types of engagement model for scope 3 as well. So at the entry level, companies are just beginning to address scope 3. They may just disclose emission from a few key categories like business travel or purchase good. In the intermediate phase, organizations are disclosing multiple scope 3 categories, and also have began engaged with suppliers, asking them to report their own emission. And advanced organization disclose all relevant categories, both upstream and downstream. So in terms of for the target segment, kind of like, again, similar one. Entry level companies have set absolute reduction target for scope 1 and 2 emission, and also have included at least one scope 3 category. In the intermediate phase, organizations have aligned their scope 1 and 2 target with the 1.5 degree pathway and have expanded to include multiple scope 3 categories. And advanced organizations take a step further. They've set net zero or 1.5 aligned target across all emission scope, including scope 3 emissions. And also these targets typically meet the criteria of initiative like SBTi and reflect global climate leadership. We already discussed about these IMP, which is essential to maintain consistent, transparent, and also credible GHG over time. There are like some of these key component part of the IMP, which start with the organization information, basic company details, primary contact, those things. Next, we have the boundary condition, define organizational and operational boundaries, outlining which part of the business and which type of emission are included. Emission quantification is the technical core. This section details the methodology and emission factor that are used for calculating emission. Data management, this describe the data sources, collection processor, and quality assurance procedure essential for maintaining data integrity. And then there is a base year that we discussed, which document the chosen year for tracking progress, and also include the management tools such as roles and responsibility, training procedure, and how files are stored and maintained. And finally, auditing and verification, which outline the process for internal review, third-party verification, and how address error and inconsistency. So for the last slide, I'm just going to quickly touch on some of these sector-specific engagement example. So many industries are actually just taking a collaborative approach to supplier engagement and emission reduction. So one leading example is the CDP supply chain that we already discussed, which include over 440 member organizations representing 6.4 trillion in purchasing power. In the electronic sector, there is this Responsible Business Alliance, which has created a standardized GHG measurement approach. The Electric Utility Industry Alliance, which includes 16 of the largest US utilities, which are working together to collect climate-related data from shared suppliers. And the consumer goods sectors also, manufacturing and retailing, are developing shared climate sustainability standard. These efforts actually aim to align the expectation across the supply chain and also simplify the reporting for supplier. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. So we try to just cover those key guidelines that you need to know in order to do your climate disclosure through mainly on the GHG management, how to make the inventory, how to set the target, how to come up with the transition plan, and also how to start to do some carbon reduction for the business. I hope you enjoyed this one. Now we can actually just open up for Q&A. Thanks.